Well, tonight I'm going to be talking about the toxicities in your training, saying no to the toxicities, saying no to the toxicities in your training, your work, and your life, or to those relationships that drain your energy, potential, and talent. If you want the best of yourself, you have to begin to value yourself. Value yourself enough to refuse to allow your power to be taken from you. And that means that we examine the areas in training, both internally and externally, that drain the gold, that drain your gold. What's heavy, what's light, what's adding to you, what's taking away from you. And look, for my part, I'm a coach. The script says that I need to tell you how I'm going to do it for you. The truth is, only you can do it. And I can point like any other form of mentor or coach, but it's ultimately your connection with yourself that's going to, be the ultimate measure of your potential, not mine. So that's just how it is. So the practice then is to examine the areas that are heavy in your process. What's weighing you down? What's light, what's heavy? What's light, what's heavy in your day, in your day-to-day training environment? Examining whether people are lifting you up or dragging you down, which is it? Regardless of how beneficial you or indeed they think they are to you. You owe it to your process to make the most of it, and that means making the most of yourself. Thinking enough of yourself, feeling that you're enough to make a decision and a choice towards the efficacy of your own process. And that's important. If you find your energy is being drained, like you're being pulled down by others or groups or situations, then take action. Leave. It's easy. It's not a subpoena. You don't have to stay where the energy's heavy. You don't have to stay where you feel you're being pulled down. And I know it's difficult, but ultimately that responsibility is with you. And it's not with the other people. If you're in judgment of them or uncomfortable with them, find the environment toxic, then take action and remove yourself from it. Because inaction simply adds to the toxicity that's being felt. And this is true of all collectives. All collectives where there's people that are coming together. And often, in those collectives, we wear a veneer, a nice veneer where we tell each other that we're feeling great when we're actually not. We're feeling drained. And to identify that. Most of the time, the toxicity you're feeling is wrapped up in inaction and the inability to speak up for yourself and for your own needs. And you will eventually work out with regard to training and collectives that you're fighting against yourself. There really is no opponent other than the one that's ruminating in your own head, ruminating about whether you should stay or not and why why the energy is heavy or why it's draining you. There's no need for that. The action is in simply making a choice to go one way or the other and choosing the lighter option for yourself so that you can make the most of your own process. And when you stop opposing yourself, you'll find that the opposition in your sport and life will dissolve and you'll simply take action to cease the resistance. So that's the choice, to always take action where our process is concerned. And that's not being selfish, right? That's just knowing your own self-worth. And that's a version of self-trust. So if knowing your own potential is important, then you have to take the view that your inner peace and your application to purpose, passion, and evolution are primary. They're primary. Otherwise, you're hampering your own evolution, your own development as an athlete and as a person. So that means that we examine, inquire, and research your own experience. If you're doing sessions, training in groups, following programs and structures that are leaving you empty, then you have to decide to not do that anymore and find a path that's more aligned with your own journey, right? That's the truth of it. We trust in programs and structures because we don't have our own backs. And one size never fits all, okay? So most people don't do that for one simple reason. They just don't have enough trust in themselves. And this lack of trust leads them to farm out their responsibility. And this is what leads them blindly to follow structures that don't work for them. And that lack of trust will eventually turn toxic in that we blame the outer structures for a lack of inner trust. Or we blame those people out there for a lack of inner trust. We reflect on to them what we're feeling inside and think it's coming from them, but it's actually coming from us. It's a deeper message to take action, to make a choice, to move. It doesn't matter whether the collective is a sport collective or a work environment. If people are involved, it's the same issue. You can look at it in all aspects of your life where there are collectives involved. Are they serving you or are they draining you? Where is your talents best served? And taking a look at many sporting structures, we can see this playing out. Problem after problem. Crippling politics and dysfunctional communication leads to a lack of progress and critically a lack of any real change. You know, the definition of insanity is to keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again because it feels comfortable. Opinions are a lousy replacement for self-trust and functional, vulnerable, and authentic communication. And that means with others and with yourself, to not lie to yourself and to not lie to others. To move into authenticity. And many organizations suffer from a toxic work environment, not because of the collective, but because of a lack of self-trust on the individual's part. And when you have a collective full of people who don't trust themselves, you have an organization full of people who are pushing to farm out responsibility, trying to find answers in other people, trying to find answers out there for themselves. And that leads to chaos. That leads to rumination, worry, distrust, cynicism. And the way out of that is to simply make a choice for vulnerability and authenticity. A lack of trust within ourselves will ultimately lead to a lack of trust in others, a lack of trust in the work that we do, and a lack of basic trust in life. And that is essentially the definition of toxicity. So it's basically working to find out the areas in our life that feel toxic. If we don't inquire, right? If we don't look inwards, we can't see the truth. We feel it, but we're not acting on it. And in this way, we poison ourselves, our individual talents and our collectives. And further to that, we rob the world of the potential of both the individual and the collaborative potential of groups of people, of collectives. The training environment, the work environment, we see it reflected everywhere. This farming out, this veneer, this mask that we wear, that we present to the outer world and that the outer world presents to us. And essentially, we need to learn how to hold people to the way they are now, not to how they used to be. And the same thing applies internally. If we can't forgive the past and create change, then we seriously tamper with the possibility and the potential of the future. We keep ourselves stuck and we keep the world out there stuck. We keep the people we know stuck. If we want to embrace the future, we have to let go of yesterday and any toxic taste that remains in it. Let it go and it will let you go. It's the ultimate act of to and fro. It's the ultimate act of forgiveness. And the forgiving out there is a forgiving that comes back in. And in the end, we need to be a version of ourselves that doesn't suit others. Don't be a version of yourself that suits others. It may somehow feel safe for others, but it's death to you. It's death to your potential and it's death to your talents. And most of us have to learn this the hard way. And yes, people will hold you to the way you always have been. And yes, that may not have been who you really were. There may even be regret, but that's no reason to remain trapped in the past. Perpetuating that story helps no one move on. It keeps you stuck. And this is the dynamic of the collective energy that feels off to us, that we often feel something, we don't actually know what's going on until we look inwards. And then when we look inwards and we feel that discomfort, we need to shift, change. Transformation and personal evolution and the natural flux of human life. We weren't designed to remain stuck in structures. You know, our best chance for growth, both individually and collectively, lies in our ability to encourage that growth in each other, and more importantly, within ourselves. Because growth is what it's all about. And when you're feeling uncomfortable and you're feeling stuck, it's because we're limiting ourselves. We're putting the brakes on ourselves. And when we're putting the brakes on ourselves and limiting ourselves, we're putting the brakes on other people and limiting them too. And then the same thing is reflected back and we all end up stuck. And that's why structures and the change in structures need first to feel the change in you. Because when you make that shift, when you make that change, when you take that action, you give those outer collectives the permission to do exactly the same thing. We get to forgive the past and move on from here and now into the future without the limitations, without the brakes. And that is a purposeful, passionate way of moving forward to make that shift, to make that change. Thanks for listening.